Malaysia, we have been advocating that there should be strengthening of the social protection network for the people for the last 1.5 years since the COVID started. And we're actually conducting an active campaign. And there are other social groups as well that are in this campaign together with us. One of the things we're asking for is a monthly cash transfer to the poorest decile of Malaysian families, of $1,000 a month. This $1,000, okay, our minimum wage is 1,200 per month. So this is the $1,000 a month thing. Our median factory worker income is about $2,000 a month. So it's not a very large figure. The government has been giving out some money during the COVID period, but once every 4 to 6 months, and it's not enough. So we're asking this for the poorest families for the next at least 1 year, because we find that the impact of COVID has been very varied. The people most badly affected are the daily paid workers, the contract workers, the small business people, and they've really been hit very badly in terms of the income. So that's what we're asking for. This is okay. 10% of our families is about 720,000 families. It comes to about 8.6 billion per year. I've just shown that to show what the federal budget is per year. It's about almost 300 billion. The welfare budget is only 2.5 billion. So this program will be about 3 times the welfare budget. We already had a budget deficit of about 50 billion before COVID. It's much more now. These are some of the fiscal restraints. The other thing we're asking for is we're asking for expansion of the disability insurance for all working people. You see, in Malaysia, we have something called SOCSO, which is the Social Security Organization. Right now, about 6.5 million workers are actually contributing to it, 6.5 million in the formal sector. They contribute 1% of their wages every month. If they get severely disabled before the age of 60, SOCSO will pay them a pension for life. The pension is about 50 to 65% of their current wages. So what we are asking for is that the government pays the contribution for the remainder of the workers. We have 16 million in the workforce, 6.5 million are already covered by SOCSO, 1.6 million are government servants and they're covered by government, 1.8 million are taxpayers, and so we can maybe get a bit of the tax money to cover it. So the government had to fork out the payment for 6.1 million. So we are estimating if you take the median factory wage of $2,000 a month, we assume that's the wage of all the people in the informal sector. So 10%, 1% of that is $20, 20 ringgit per month, 240 per year. It comes to about 1.5 billion, which isn't really too high. So we're pushing for this. This will give a lot of support in case there's disability or death of the breadwinner. This will cover them. We have also part of it. We've got 5 points in our program. This is the third one, is universal old age pension. We have what's called the Employment Provident Fund. And now 6.5, of course, formal sector workers contributing. The fund is pretty big. Size is about 1 trillion. Malaysian GDP in 2019 was about 1.5 trillion. So it's a fairly big fund. What we are asking for is those who are not covered by this, because all those in the non-formal sector are not covered by EPF. So we're asking for all those non-formal sector workers to be, not only non-formal, but all those above 65. We estimate the number to be 1.5 million. $300 a month becomes to 5.4 billion. See, this sum of money is not enough for them to live independently. They can still live with their children, but this will help them a lot. This little bit of money coming in. We're also talking about this PPR is Program Perumahan Rakyat, People's Housing Scheme. We are asking, you see now in Malaysia, about 20% of families do not own their own houses. And the rent or the housing loans is causing severe financial stress to the bottom 40% of families. So it's saying the government should build houses and rent these out at affordable rates to the people in the bottom 40% of the population. This will come to about, let's say you have to build 100,000 houses at the cost of building of 60,000 ringgit per unit, which comes to about 6 billion. This is again another. Okay, the other thing we're asking for is increase of the health budget from its current 2% of GDP to about 4%. We need more hospitals, we need more medical staff, we need more specialists in government service. So we're asking for this. So these are the things that we are asking for. The main problem is even the population, many people in the country will say this is the wrong strategy. Malaysians will say this will make our people dependent on handouts. This will increase the cost to government. This will increase our taxes. It will make us lazy and make us less efficient. So that is something we really have to address. It's not only the government saying we don't have the fiscal space. It is ordinary citizens who say it's not a good idea. The second thing, of course, is the idea of not having funds for this program. We are already having a large deficit. Our deficit is about 50 billion before the pandemic, and now of course gone more. We have had to change our debt ceiling of the government from 55% of GDP to 60%, and now we already exceeded that. So there is a tendency to say we got to cut down on fiscal expenditure. So coming to this of the strategy being wrong, what we are arguing is that there is wage suppression in Malaysia. Our factory wages for factories, the same sort of factories in Germany or in the US, our wages here are about 1/6 to 1/8. Because of the global change, they managed to suppress the wages here to extract profits. And so we are saying, since our workers are sacrificing by working for low wages in our factories, we're looking for low wages, because plantations, for example, we raise wages in our plantations, our palm oil can't compete with Indonesian palm oil in the global market. So there's a problem of wages being pushed down below their fair value. And our argument is, since our workers are sacrificing by accepting a lower wage, not demanding a higher thing, it's only fair we have so-called social wage in the form of social protection. But it is a fair social contract. It's not a handout, but they've earned it. The people, the poorer people, the working people of the country, whether they are factory workers or they are farmers, smallholders or small business people, they are getting small incomes because we are sacrificing. So this is what we are trying to argue. This is mainly to convince other Malaysians that we've got to do this. Now, if you look at this, just the 5 schemes I've talked about will mean an additional about 27.5 billion, in the first year, all the things I've talked about. And compared to a national, our budget was 300 billion last year. So it's about a 10% increase, but we already have about 20% of our budget, about 60, 70 billion is borrowed money. We're not, of the 300 billion, we're only collecting about 230 billion as revenue. 70 billion is borrowed. And you got to put in the extra 70 billion we got to turn over. We got to, every year, bonds mature, we got to pay back. So we need to borrow about 150 billion ringgit this year, new bonds. And this is the kind of fiscal problem that the government will point at. Now, you see, if you look at Malaysia, our federal government expenditure as part of our GDP has gone down since the 80s. I think it's happened in many countries. Our corporate tax rate was 40% in 1987. From 1988 onwards, it's been cut down. Now it's down to 24%. The reason why we do it is we are competing with Singapore. Singapore is 18% now. Thailand is, I think, 19%. So the countries in the region are in a race to the bottom in terms of corporate taxes, because we want to be friendly to FDI. We want to get FDI in. So that's something we've got to address at the ASEAN level. ASEAN people's movements got to say we've got to do something about this race to the bottom in corporate taxes, this pressure to keep our wages low so we can get in FDI is actually making us all poor. And this is something that's difficult to do within one country, because if we push for increased corporate taxes, our employers federation yells out and says, look, we're going to become unprofitable. We're going to shift to other countries. It's something you've got to look at. The other thing we've got to talk about is we are going into all these free trade agreements, the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, the CPTPP, RCEP. And the problem with many of these free trade agreements is it reduces policy space for governments. It enables capital transfers freely. It enables companies to avoid paying taxes, transfer pricing. So it actually strengthens the hand of the corporate class and weakens the hand of government. And we got to think of how we together within these free trade agreements can close those loopholes and bring in clauses that make it difficult for companies and corporations to avoid paying taxes.